So the curiosity on what algorithms drive this learning and how can you have machines that can think, that's been there in me from day one. We subscribe to this philosophy which says greatness cannot be planned. If you're not being very mindful, the temptation is to simply copy paste in ChatGPT and get the answer and just yeah. For me, I don't understand how you can learn without writing. India, in that sense, has been left far behind, at least in let's say AI and even hard sciences. It requires an obsession.
So hello, I am Adish from onRec, and today we have a very special guest with us, the Paras Chopra, the founder of Wingify and the founder of Lossfunk. So Paras, please, if you can give a small introduction to audience.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me, Adesh. Hi, everyone. My name is Paras. Previously, I founded a company called Wingify, and I sold it to private equity firm this year. And with that, the next thing I'm working on is called Lossfunk, which is an AI lab where we are exploring the different aspects of AI. It's sort of like an academic AI lab outside of academia, somewhere in between, let's say, academia and industry, where it's just purely curiosity-based research by mostly independent researchers.
Okay, so starting from first, what exactly got you interested in AI at the first place?
I was really interested in AI even 20 years back. Before starting Wingify, I remember tweaking with neural networks in 2004, not 2014, in fact, even before that, 2002 and so on, in Visual Basic 6.0. So my love and passion for AI goes much back in the past, and I think it's just a very amazing thing that machines can sometimes think like us. So the curiosity on what algorithms drive this learning and how can you have machines that can think, that's been there in me from day one.
Okay, so it's mostly curiosity driven, or was there some like a defining moment that I want to do something in this AI field, like some book, a mentor, or something like that?
No, it was just curiosity. I never wanted to build per se different products, but the idea of having machines that can think as well as humans, so-called quote unquote AGI, was the dream was still there 20 years back. I was reading lots of foundational papers, let's say from Marvin Minsky, initial backpropagation paper, and then how intelligence emerges from math was such a fascinating question that I just still obsessed with it.
Nice. So, uh, you have explained already in brief that what is loss fund. So, can you elaborate more on that? Is it an AI lab, or is it like a residency where people build projects just driven from curiosity? And what was your motivation behind founding Lost Funk or it during Dream?
Yeah, so as I said, I've been interested into AI for a long period of time, and when I say AI, I didn't just I wasn't just interested in building products or using APIs to do stuff. Wasn't so much interested into the application part of things, but more in the algorithms and the research part of it. And after selling my last company, Wingify, I had the time and resources to pursue this more seriously. So I thought, let me just start my own AI lab. And so we do have a physical space in Bangalore, and we have, I think, around 15 to 20 full-time folks, some interns, some researchers who work on different aspects in machine learning. Some are world models, reinforcement learning, LLM, etc. And I myself, I'm interested in number of themes. So it is sort of like an extended academic group in that sense, but at the same time we have this program called residency, which is more community oriented. And in residency, people just join Lost Funk for 6 weeks and do curiosity based exploration. So there's both full-time folks and this residents who are just in and out, um, partial kind of a thing.
Okay, so adding on to that, what projects are actually selected to be part of Lost Fund? Because you must have a filtering process that this will be part of the residency or something.
Yeah.
So, which kind of projects and under which scope they are being selected, and what are the main domains in the deep learning that are being explored in Lost Fund?
I think it varies. There is no set criteria for projects in the residency. Some people, for example, are trying to build autonomous aircrafts. Someone else is trying to come up with a new reinforcement algorithm that works much better at chess with sample efficiency. Some people are trying to work on discovering new biological molecules using AI. So the scope of problems for residency is very, very large because it's mostly oriented towards what the residents want to explore. So there is no top-down direction there. What I look into them is again evidence of curiosity that they are interested in ideas for ideas' sake, and they obviously have a technical capacity to execute them and explore them. But it's really again very deep and genuine curiosity instead of, let's say, I just need to build a startup or I need to do XYZ, publish a paper without any underlying curiosity.
Okay, so like currently there are some certain research projects and some projects which might be related to startups or products which are going under loss fund. So is there any defined motive that will like building India's own foundation models? So is it in a goal of loss fund in the long run?
Not really. I mean, we subscribe to this philosophy which says greatness cannot be planned. Wherein, if you see anything that was discovered in the past which had a meaningful impact, very likely it started as someone just exploring their curiosity, and it looked like a toy initially. I mean, think about ChatGPT or GPT-3 or GPT-2. OpenAI did a lot of explorations before they stumbled onto something which was worth scaling. And similarly, DeepMind did a lot of explorations. Even Bitcoin was a toy early on. So, yeah, our core philosophy is to not try to optimize an end goal directly, but rather just keep digging into what seems interesting. And if something, I mean, the nature of discovery is that you can't predict. So we're not pursuing things from an engineer's mindset that we need to build an India's foundation model, but rather the mindset is more of a discoverer, an explorer, to see what seems very underexplored, and let's just go ahead and explore it, and whatever comes out of it. If not, that's also okay.
Okay, so like Lost Funk is not currently focusing on revenue or assets. It is mostly curiosity based projects where researchers try to double down on some idea and do experiments and come up with results. Is it more of like that?
Yeah. I mean, there is no product plan, and there is no aim to make revenue, and there is no pressure to make revenue. I'm just funding it myself, and mostly it's a playground for researchers to explore interesting, weird, quirky ideas and see what comes out of it.
Like some articles, when you started Lost Funk around January, some articles mentioned that you said that you want to do more with less compute, doing things efficiently. So, what was the idea behind that?
The inspiration is human brain. I mean, current models use so much of electricity. We need to have entire city worth of electricity in a data center to power them. But human brain literally works on potatoes. We eat a potato and we're able to have intelligence. So there is something interesting going on with human mind that's yet not transferred to artificial intelligence. So how do you get there is a very interesting question, and that's where the efficiency comes from, both from power efficiency but also data efficiency, where we're able to learn so much with so few data points.
Yes, so like current industry models, current LLMs, they consume so much of power and water supplies.
Yeah.
So, do you think that an autoregressive model will be the final goal of an AGI? Like, does it need some certain breakthroughs before we get the final goal of what we even call an AGI?
Yeah, so AGI for me is, I mean, it's obviously loosely defined, but it's defined taking into view how humans learn, where it's less about performance on benchmarks, but it's more about how quickly you're able to adapt to novel situations. If I explain you rules of a completely new game that you've never seen before, you'll be able to sort of understand it. But LLMs requires, tons and tons of different data. Um, and for example, if I have you travel to a new country with a new sort of rules, I think you will take some time, but ultimately you'll be able to figure your way around in the context of new rules in a new country. But LLMs would require just tons and tons of data around that. So there is a fundamental disconnect between how sample efficient we are and how sample efficient LLMs are. And similarly, again, questions of continual learning, where if I teach something new to you, you don't end up forgetting what you learned before. So I do feel we are a couple of breakthroughs away from general intelligence, which I'm defining it as the ability to adapt to new situations, or there's a rate of learning. It should just keep on going up. Every new data point should teach you incrementally more because you formed better abstractions from previous data. So LLMs don't work that way at all.
Also, there are like one question is कि it will be either architectural or will it be more of on how datasets, how we make new datasets, how datasets are more refined. So the breakthrough will be on the dataset side or on the model architecture. That is one question. Another one is कि in some interviews, Jan Likan also said that the problem with LLMs is that they take only language inputs. Like the world model, they are not like world models which has sensory inputs. Like humans, they have senses, and they kind of do RL on what they react to the environment and what response they get from the environment. So, what are your views on that?
I think both questions are related on the data sets things versus architecture. I mean, that's how we've been doing things. We've just been expanding the data set to compensate for the nature of the architecture. I mean, for example, if LLMs fail at certain tasks in one generation, the researchers simply make a data set of that task and train LLM on that data set, and in the next generation they perform well. But humans don't work that way, right? I mean, if and also it's a little bit interesting. If you train LLM to multiply 5-digit numbers, it would multiply 5-digit numbers, but it would fail for 10-digit numbers. But humans are not like that. So for true general intelligence, architectural changes would definitely be required. um, and just I mean, just data set just seems so much inefficient. You just require all the edge cases, and you can't always cover the edge cases, and that's where we see humorous failings of LLMs, where if in a math problem you end up adding something irrelevant information like I have two cats and one dog, which has nothing to do with the math problem, they just get derailed. And from your second question regarding limitation of text only data, I think that's also accurate to a large extent, because LLMs only see text data. They don't have a richer grounding in how the world works. An LLM just parrots what it's seen, but it really doesn't know what a sphere looks like, or whether um, like all these questions, right? If you're on the North Pole and you sort of move 20 meters to south, move east, and then move north again, where do you end up landing? LLMs tended to get them wrong. I mean, now model providers probably have trained this with this data, but it showed that there is this fundamental lack of what we take as a given. Let's say if you train a model, a text model, on the fact that how geometry works, or you train a model with saying that Earth is a sphere. When you ask these kinds of questions on what happens on North Pole and the geometry on North Pole, they're not able to connect the fact that Earth is a sphere with a geometrical problem. Um, but if a future model has this unsaid assumption very explicitly understood, either by interacting with spheres and so on, I think it's likely that they'll have a better. Ultimately, the question becomes, what is their world model? LLMs have a very fragmented world model. They end up learning through heuristics and shortcuts. And while humans, we have a very rich world model depending on the problem. So when I ask you a question around what happens in North Pole, you will immediately visualize a globe, right? And you try to see what happens when you're walking on them. So it's very consistent and um, logical, but LLMs don't have that.
Ah, yes, that really makes sense. So, like currently, the LLMs are trying to just overfit on all the data set that is available, all the data that is available on the web, right? So, okay, so moving out of that discussion, like currently there are many AI agent tools like Claude Code, Cursor, etc. So there is a spark of a discussion like AI will take developers' jobs. So what are your views about it, and how do you would like to suggest the in, incoming engineer students and developers and computer science students to take these AI tools?
Yeah, I do think there is an impact already in early stage hiring. Um, I mean, obviously, the claims that jobs, software jobs, all of them are going away. I think they have one extreme, and the other extreme is that there is no impact of AI on software jobs. I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle. There is an impact, but right now these models behave more like interns. Um, but because they behave like interns, the jobs of interns and early stage employees is in risk, right? Because a senior engineer can use, instead of hiring like a junior engineer, can use these tools to get the same job done. So there is definitely an impact, and I think the impact will probably just keep on growing. A two-person team can do a lot more today versus what it was able to do 5 years back. And this is the general trend of technology. I think it's very hard to give precise advice apart from saying that you should master these AI tools instead of fearing them. People, I mean, companies and people would still want to hire humans to do, critical jobs and to have someone account. I mean, you can't hold Cloud Code accountable to something. You ultimately, I mean, you want a human to be accountable to something. If your payment system fails, you want to have someone who owns the responsibility. So I think you need to be that person who can take that responsibility. Um, and you do that by using these tools instead of fearing them.
Also, so how learning has changed with these advent of these AI tools? Like, I can ask anything about what I want to know from ChatGPT and these tools, and I can actually make automations from Claude Code, Cursor. So, how one should approach learning while also using these AI tools? Because relying too much on them can also hamper someone's learning, right? So, what is your perspective on it?
Yeah, with AI tools, there is this temptation to use shortcuts. Let's say if there's a math problem in your class assignment, or even when you're implementing something, if you're not being very mindful, the temptation is to simply copy paste in ChatGPT and get the answer and just go with it. But I think ultimately it will bite back because you're delegating more and more your or of your cognitive resources to ChatGPT. But instead, I think it's very important for any problem when it comes to do first pass in your head or on paper, and only where you find gaps, trying to use ChatGPT or these tools to fill those gaps. So instead of trying to just take shortcuts, these are amazing tools to help build better understanding. So if you get a problem in one of your subjects or in future when you're doing a job, it's very important to take a piece of paper and trying to just solve it yourself, or trying to understand it as deeply as possible. Uh, but because earlier when if you were stuck, you were stuck. But now if you're stuck, you have a magical tool, ChatGPT or Claude, to help you out. So by all means, that needs to be done. But resisting the temptation to delegating entire problem solving, that's very important.
Yes. Also, for learning, I have read some of your posts. You have always emphasized that writing should always be a part of learning. One should always learn with the writing. Like, you have also written so many blogs on Lossfunk newsletters and also your own blog, Inverted Passion. So, what is your take on writing?
Yeah, for me, I don't understand how you can learn without writing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, writing is a way to try to explain it to someone. which could be you in future, the basic concepts of what you've learned. I think a lot of times when we are learning, let's say you're watching a YouTube video and you are nodding along, I think there's a perception of understanding, but after the YouTube video, if I ask, tell me everything you've learned, uh, what you feel you've learned versus what you'll be able to explain to someone else, I think there's a big gap. And to bridge that gap, you need to sit down and actually just put the effort. If learning feels easy, um, there's no learning happening. I mean, unfortunately, sort of like it borders on being entertainment. Learning, by definition, does feel hard, where you're just jogging your mind, trying to make new neural connections, trying to break old ones. So it should feel like you're spending effort. And that can only happen when you're just actively engaged. And writing is a great way to be actively engaged.
Yes. So let's talk about something AI from the Indian perspective. So we have these Chinese labs like Moonshot, DeepSeek, Quinn, which are catching up on the Western labs of OpenAI and Anthropic. But India is still very far behind in this race. So why does this gap exist in the first place?
They started long back. If you see China's contribution to science and technology across the domains, right from biology to physics to even math and computer science, I think in last decade, 2010 starting, it had started climbing up because of very conscious choice by Chinese government to increase their hard sciences R&D output. Um, so, and what we are seeing right now is simply a function of that environment where expertise in hard sciences is rewarded in China. And I mean, along with that, there is significant amount of funding available also. And India, in that sense, has been left far behind, at least in, let's say, AI and even hard sciences domains. And you can measure that through multiple ways, right from number of patents filed to Nobel Prizes to even the number of universities in top 100 to papers output. So there's multiple dimensions of measuring R&D, and um, India is just far behind that. To a large extent, I think it's a function of a lot of Indian young researchers, let's say in undergrad, would simply go to US for their PhD and would remain there. So Indians are doing a great work all over the world. And an attention paper obviously had two Indian origin researchers. Uh, but within India, because people just have, there's a lot of brain drain happening. That's also sort of plays a big part.
Like talking about the brain drain, the main contributor to that is that there are not much research opportunities for students. Like if there is some undergrad student who wants to pursue research further, he might not pursue research in India because he will not see any further scopes. So do you think it is a, because of a lack in the education system, or what is the main cause of the brain drain?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree. There are network effects where good researchers attract good researchers, right? So if there is a great lab and researcher at MIT, Stanford, or Nila, a young researcher with a lot of potential undergrad would want to go there versus be here. So creating that research climate and having star researchers here does require a lot of effort. And China did that. China did that very consciously in Tsinghua University and a lot of other universities. But in India, that's not yet happened. So I'm not blaming people at all. I think it's completely rational for people to go to places where they feel their effort will be maximized, their potential will be maximized. And right now, majorly those conditions don't exist from undergraduate to PhD level within India. But we need to change that. If as a country we need to catch up in our R&D output.
Okay, so that was one perspective that India is still very far behind. So, what should be the realistic target of India? Like building products around AI or building it their own foundational models, like some private companies are working on it. So, where does India find it? Like providing services or products, or what should be the aim of Indian like
Yeah,
the
I don't know. That's a hard question.
Mhm.
I think people should do things that they have a competitive or comparative advantage on. Um, I don't. I mean, I don't believe in head-to-head competition. Head-to-head competition is never a good idea. I mean, building foundation models for India is strategically important from a sovereignty perspective. But if I were like a company or a startup, I would not want to head-to-head compete with OpenAI. I would rather work on things that can go beyond it, which are orthogonal to the directions that other labs are pursuing. So I believe in different approaches being better instead of just going head-to-head. So what is something completely different you can do? Can you work on post LLM approaches? Like Jan LeCun says, do you want to work on energy based models? Um, and of course, if you are best placed to provide AI services, which it feels like India might, then it's good to double down on that.
So like as you talked about the differentiation, some people try the differentiation as in for that they optimize for Indian market. They try to serve for India, but in one of your replies, you said that it optimizing for Indian markets will not scale well. Like uh, there was a
India is still a comparatively smaller tech market,
Mhm.
and if you're building a tech product that can be used anywhere in the world, then why not go for the largest markets you can, which is US, Europe, and UK, etc. India is a very, very small tech market, and targeting India just because you are in India doesn't make sense to me. Internet is borderless. We are using Facebook, OpenAI, Google, which are in San Francisco. So why can't your product be used all over the world? And so this mindset of because I'm in India, I'll target Indian market. That to me doesn't make sense. Instead, it should be like I will use the cost advantage of building product in India, but I'll build such a good product that it is used all over the world. Just like we use Samsung, Korea, Sony, Japan. Like this, we use all the products from all over the
yes.
world.
Uh, So, like, what's your perspective on the different small AI labs working on language models for Indian languages? Like, there is a very diverse language set in India, and there are some languages which have very small data sets. So, what is your perspective on developing language models for Indian markets? Like, uh, some very good population living not living in urban areas is still illiterate, uh, not illiterate to be exact. They don't know English enough. So, will models for Indian languages change something for India?
Yeah, so it depends on the motivation. If you want to make a lot of money, you're
Mhm.
VC funded, then that perhaps is a smaller market. Uh, Maybe not in volumes, but maybe in terms of purchasing power. So whether you want to do that, if you want to build a VC funded company, probably the answer is no. From a research question perspective, how can you take a low resource language where there's not a lot of digitization and build a model out of it? That's a very interesting research question. And from a social impact perspective, also, I think building models is just one thing, but then social impact depends on many other things. Can you reach out to those people? Can you educate them? Will they use them? And so on and so forth. And all of that you have to keep in mind.
Okay, so that was very nice perspective over India and AI. So talking about your previous ventures, how did you reach to Wingify? Like, what was your exploration behind Wingify? Because I had seen that you had previous ventures before Wingify also, and there is a path that led you to Wingify. So can you elaborate that?
Yeah, so I was fascinated by the idea of startups in my college. So every summer between different years, I would start a startup. So I ended up starting up three, four different startups, and they ended up failing for a variety of reasons. But each time they just taught me something new. So after graduating, I tried again, with Wingify, and Wingify's first version also did not work out. So I pivoted and iterated again the fifth or sixth time, and that's when it ended up getting clicked in the market, which is the product called VWO, and that's the product that just got a very strong product market fit and enabled me to scale Wingify. Um, yeah, so it was just lots of obsession over the question, what makes a startup successful, essentially. So for me, it was more, again, at some level, curiosity driven, that why is that everyone else that I hear about getting success, like Google, Yahoo, Facebook, etc., but my startups were failing. So that just kept giving me the fuel to just keep trying until something cracked.
So it's like many students, like there is a student club also, ESL IITR. So there are many students trying similar entrepreneurial ventures during their college years. What is your advice for them?
It requires an obsession, um, and the more number of tries you have, and if you're learning with each try, uh, the more chances that you succeed. So you should definitely expect first attempt to fail. There's just lots of variables, and it's very unlikely that you'll end up solving for all those variables that are required for startup success. So if you're someone who will probably just wants to succeed with their first idea, that won't happen. So be ready for your fourth and fifth idea to click, and even then, there's no guarantee. So you have to be really, really interested in startups and not be just willing to give up. Is I think that's been said before, but that's true. If you see most startups, they are uh, they are a product of a lot of iterations of various different ideas.
Yes, like previously you have also talked about on various podcasts, like not loving your own idea, but uh, loving what people would actually require in that idea.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean that I elaborate in my book. I recently wrote a book called Book of Clarity, and yeah, I think one of the things that entrepreneurs have to be careful of is not falling in love with their idea, but rather be like psychologists and uh, trying to just observe what motivates people, how are they spending their days, where they're getting frustrated. I mean, products that succeed and end up succeeding because they give a radically more efficiency versus an existing alternative. For example, Uber gave 10x more efficiency over calling a cab and haggling with the cab driver and so on and so forth. So fundamentally, these behaviors and motivations don't change, but products that make those behaviors, which are already motivations in humans' desires, much easy to fulfill or cheaper to fulfill, they end up succeeding. So my recommendation is for you to study how people are behaving and how can you make their behavior much more simpler, easier, cheaper, faster.
So I have a personal question from you. Like I see you as a journalist. Like you try to pick up a field and read a lot about it. So there is also a term called polymath, which is pursuing deep expertise in multiple fields. So on which side do you find yourself having expertise, very in-depth expertise in one field, or being a journalist or a polymath?
I think these are probably not as binary as we think, or uh, there's, there's, there's not necessarily a trade off between these two. What I try to do is try to maximize the surface area or the area under the curve. And I think interesting bit is the more deeper you go in a field, the more abstractions you learn that are very transferable to other fields. So you become better at other fields also. So I think the first step to sort of trying to answer this question is to ask whether there is a trade-off in the first place or not. Someone who's really curious, for example, if they become great at front-end engineering, for example, they'll have so much of frameworks and the way an engineer thinks that will be highly transferable to something like back-end engineering as well. So the way to distinguish is that what common abstractions about the world you are learning, that to me is very, very important. and everything else is just facts. For example, what library to use in front end engineering is just a fact that you can learn in some time. But the way of thinking that you end up learning by obsessing about front end engineering is highly transferable to many other domains.
Mm, true.
So if you, for example, go very deep into AI machine learning, you end up thinking about questions that give you a lot of insight in an answer into evolution, economics, human psychology, world, science. And the more you learn about physics, the more you understand about math. So a lot of these things are connected ultimately in the world. So there is no trade-off there.
Okay. So before closing this off, considering the fact that the main audience of this is budding researchers and engineers across IITs, IIScs, so what is your advice, one advice for them?
I think my one advice is that don't believe in just traditional career progression of, let's say, an undergrad research, master, PhD, postdoc, etc. Um, think of research as something, an activity that you can engage in at any level, depending on, of course, your obsession. And even if you end up taking a job, you can still do a research. For example, Anthropic co-founder Chris Ola did a lot of research and amazing research. He's co-founded Anthropic, but he never went to college. And similarly, OpenAI's head of research right now doesn't have a PhD degree. So have researcher mindset, more or less independent of credentials you end up getting, and just think and obsess about what does good research means and how can you be good researcher year after year, irrespective of whether you get a PhD or not.
Thanks. That was very valuable insight from you, Paras.
Thank you. Thanks, Adesh.